Hi guys, I'm Garry Tonon. I am 23 years old and I'm from Lenoka Harbor, New Jersey. I came up through Ocean County Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Time the Blast is the instructor there. He's one of Ricardo's black belts. But I trained among the entire team for the most part. Maybe for like the first year I was just training with Tom, and then after that, we'd make frequent trips, me and him, to Ricardo's and Renzo's and things like that. So, the team's been a big influence. All of the teams, Ricardo's and Renzo's, have been a big influence in my jiu-jitsu from the very beginning. Like, I started wrestling because a lot of my cousins wrestled, and they thought it would be something cool to get me interested in. And I was always relatively competitive and somewhat aggressive and stuff. So I was never an amazing wrestler at the scholastic levels or anything like that. That's why I stopped doing it. And then I did it for a period of 5 years. I made some strides, and I think the biggest contribution that my wrestling at that point, at that stage of the game, because I did some other wrestlings elsewhere. At that stage of the game, I think what it did was introduce me to grappling as a martial art. We consider pretty much anything, any groundwork, whether it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, whatever the case may be, grappling. So I think it introduced me to grappling as a martial art. I had no idea jiu-jitsu existed until I was 14, 15. Once I got introduced to that by another friend, I liked that so much more. I liked the environment so much more, the people, and just the methodology behind learning. The methodology in the American style of scholastic wrestling, in most high school, middle school programs, is push harder and faster to get a better result. Learning a technique involved maybe the teaching of a technique very briefly, and then a drilling of it maybe 100 times as fast as you possibly could. There wasn't as much learning going on, I felt like. Not nearly as much so as in the jiu-jitsu world. I don't think wrestling greatly influenced my work in jiu-jitsu. I pretty much tried to start jiu-jitsu with like an open mentality about what was going on in terms of, I just tried to learn everything that was being taught and apply it. As I started to move on in the sport, I certainly started to believe that was, a big part of the sport. Not a big part of the sport, I would say, in terms of sport jiu-jitsu as it existed back then. When I first started, wrestling was a very small part of the sport. You didn't see a lot of people winning matches because they were scoring 2 points for takedowns. That's not a big element. It's certainly not a big element today, at least in IBJJF competition. However, I felt it was a huge component of the self-defense aspect of the martial art. I have a firm belief, and I explain this to my students all the time, that if you're going to train a martial art that exists solely on the ground for the most part, you sure as hell better find a way to get work there, And unless you're a professional boxer who's going to knock somebody to the ground with punches, you better be able to find a way to get them to the ground, and that's what you're wrestling. So I spend half the time teaching my students how to take people down, and half the time, work on the floor. Where I think my wrestling started to incorporate better with my jiu-jitsu. I always tried to focus on it as much as I can, but I don't think it blended as well until I started working with Matthew Pletcher, who is a D1 coach, or was a D1 captain at Rutgers. When he started working with me, I've been working with him for probably 2 years now. That's when I really felt like I started to pick up the pace. Also, I think John contributed a little bit to it too. He certainly does include a lot of wrestling. So I think I've made some leaps and bounds in my wrestling in the past 2 years, to be honest. that, along with like what we talked about before with like a certain mentality and things about jiu-jitsu and wrestling, kind of like a jiu-jitsu mentality seems a little bit more relaxed, and, you kind of let many people's, idea of the sport is, you let your partner kind of, get entangled into a bad position or something like that, whereas wrestling seems to be more aggressive in the sense that you're always trying to put your partner in a bad position, always kind of trying to attack. And I think that meshes very well with this submission grappling mindset that we're trying to create here. And I think that's a lot of what you're seeing. But there's certainly certain scenarios that mix well with jiu-jitsu and wrestling. A lot of the front head situations, so where you control like a front head and arm, where you transition to guillotines and things like that, where you see a great deal of my wrestling come out, or even back control, just controlling somebody's single wrists and things like that. Some of the groundwork even in wrestling, not just the stand-up, also translates through, and you see some of the work done there as well. With a lot of these other sports, there certainly are sports that aren't considered spectator sports that still get some attention just because they've existed for a really long time. But at this stage of the game, trying to turn jiu-jitsu into a spectator sport to the point where people are interested in watching it is going to be crucial to the development of it becoming a professional sport where people can get paid. That being said, in terms of having an entertaining style and not just trying to win, becomes very, very important. And there's a lot of crossover discussion between mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu in terms of the sports, because mixed martial arts obviously rose to a point where it's a professional sport now and people are interested in watching it, and it didn't used to be that way, you know what I mean? That's what we kind of hope to do with jiu-jitsu. That's what we're trying to do. We want to make it so that people can host events where we grapple, and people are excited to come watch. So there's some sort of revenue stream. So at least there's some sort of money coming into the sport, so that these guys that dedicate their whole life to getting great at this martial art, can get some sort of reward for it. Sure, you can make money teaching other people jiu-jitsu, but it's hard to focus completely on teaching and be a professional in the martial art at the same time in terms of competing and things like that. So for me, that's what it's about. Ultimately, become a very good competitor, and then try to help other people achieve similar goals, or even different goals that are and use the skills that I've used to kind of help myself through my career, or in my job, or in my business, or whatever the case may be, to kind of help them in whatever direction they might want to go. They don't have to be jiu-jitsu competitors. I have a school of many different types of professionals that do many different things. So if I can in some way use the things that I've learned in jiu-jitsu to help them achieve the things they want to achieve, then that's great for me.